And now for more on this story, we joined by City of Cape Town's Committee Member for Safety and Security, Jean-Pierre Smith. JP, good evening and thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening.
JP, I know that we are told and reports saying that the fire has been contained. What is the situation at hand at the moment as we speak? I understand that you also had to conduct a bit of inspection around Simon's Town. What is the situation?
Well, the inspection is evident from the sunburn. That was several hours of wind and sun, and appreciation for the firefighters who've been doing this for 5 days, and a special appreciation for the volunteers between the NCC working on fire, the City of Cape Town staff. I have great appreciation for the volunteers and thank you to them. By this afternoon, before the wind strength increased as significantly as it had, we had 2 areas that were still at risk, Smithswinkelspy and the Red Hill informal settlement. Those were the 2 that fire was very closely monitoring, and the choppers were going non-stop. The City of Cape Town's contracted services as well as working on fire, they've put in 170 hours, and this afternoon I was watching them water bomb an area above the Glencairn Expressway where a secondary fire broke out that really stretched the fire services very thinly between about 290 plus resources that we had on the ground, and there are around 100 to 120 that Sandparks, Volunteer Wildfire Services, NCC, and working on fire had on ground. Those were really put to the test these last few days.
So, can we safely say the fire has been contained? I understand that there's flare-ups, but is the danger over, to put it in simpler terms, JP?
It was this afternoon. I will qualify my comments based on the incredible gusting wind. When I was on site this afternoon, it was gusting from 33 to 40 kilometers an hour. That's not pleasant. In parts, you are wind-shielded because of the mountain. But in other parts, it was flaring up continuously as a consequence, and the fire departments was running back and forth trying to subdue these new flare-ups. Other firefighters, especially from working on fire in Sandparks, were out on the fire line in inaccessible areas. Cape Town firefighters were below the cliffs at Smithswinkelspy when the burning materials were falling down the cliff and starting new fires at the bottom. And of course, our big panic is that the wind would shift direction. At the moment. With the southerly, it was blowing the fire back on already burnt areas, which is okay. But if that switched to a westerly or northwesterly direction, that could be very dangerous. And so that's what we were guarding against. But as you said earlier, a fire so far, and may it remain like that, without casualties, and that's the single biggest test, no loss of human life. 5 injuries only that were modest or minor injuries, no hospitalizations of firefighting staff, and no property losses other than one old derelict structure at the back of the SA Navy base, and that's how we intend to keep it. And if you look at how close the fire got during my moving around this afternoon, it was evident that the fire had come within meters of private structures, and that the signaling base had actually burned right through the base without destroying any structures. So a testament to the incredible partnership and work that's been done there.
So have residents been allowed to go back to their residence, those that were evacuated for fear of the fire spreading further?
Yes, sir. The provisional evacuations were brief and residents were able to return quite quickly. The areas at risk with those roads exposed to ratio and others have been subdued. There's nothing left to burn. The fire has burnt into the fire breaks and was effectively stopped and did not manage to propagate across the fire breaks into the tree line below that, because the significant trees below those fire breaks that could all supply new fuel for burning, and leaves and other stuff in people's gutters and wooden structures around people's properties. So ample things that could burn in turn, but that was stopped through the firefighters who did incredible work. And if you see my Facebook page, you'll see the discussion with a few firefighters sleeping on a sidewalk whilst they take a break, while others stand guard to watch for potential risk of those fires. jumping those fire breaks, jumping the roads, as it has managed to do in some cases. And really just an incredible effort coordinated by the various agencies working very closely together. And incredible help from the public who brought endless donations of energy drinks, water, food, etc. Even this afternoon, Councillor Simon Alcock and Alderman Felicity Purchase were assisting a councillor with Councillor Franca, and the local area councillors were assisting with distributing those.
JP, is there, I mean, understandably the fire has been contained, some hot spots and flare-ups expected, as you explained, due to the very strong winds, but is there a contingency plan just to make sure that should the flare-ups become worse, then they are managed and they don't, spread as they have done over the past 4 days?
Absolutely. Look, the story of fire in Cape Town is always the story of wind. If there's a fire that gets to this point where you've reported on for multiple days, it's because there's wind. A fire with no wind is put out in an hour. It's barely news. It's a statistic somewhere in a column, if that. But when a story becomes a conflagration like this, it's because there is massive wind driving it for days. And that sadly is the case now, and there's wind forecast for next week as well. So under these circumstances, there are crews dispatched. They will be until 6 a.m. tomorrow morning, and only then will those return to their respective fire stations. Keep in mind that out of the 33 fire stations around the city, we have had only 3 on run normally. All the others have been evacuated to deal with this massive fire spread over an incredibly large area. And we're very grateful to the 5 municipalities around us who, when we declared code red, when we'd run out of resources, when we allocated or deployed every fire resource to this area, assisted us. And so there would have been some confused Cape Townians who had a fire in their local area responded to by a fire department from Stellenbosch or from Overberg or otherwise who showed up, or Drakensberg, who showed up to assist with that fire. Thanks to the mutual aid agreements which we have in place, we helped them at times, and today it was their turn to help us. Normally the fire department over this time is addressing a very significant fire burden. Since in the first 20 days of December, we had 2,500 fires, 1,500 of those wildfires. So the department is responding to between 100 and 125 fires a day. And we've had to deal with those whilst dealing with this massive fire over a very large area without a single loss of property. And that's a testament to the investment we've made in the fire department over the last decade and a half, steadily investing in keeping the fire department at international standard.
I jump here. We're going to have to leave it there, but thank you so much for making time to speak to us. Just a bit of alu on that skin to prevent the sunburn will work.